Seems fair to me.
Well, if you don't know what fair is, you can't make it. Unacceptable by any reason.
Donnybrook is made possible by the members of the 9 Network.
Well, here we are, better together, so to speak, and we'll be talking about that in just a moment. But thank you so much for joining us for another edition of Donnybrook, brought to you by our friends at the Gatesworth, who make this program possible every week, and we sure appreciate that. Let's meet our panelists for this edition, starting with the media veteran herself from KTRS, Wendy Wiese. From the St. Louis Post-Dispatch and STLtoday.com, Bill McClellan. From the Riverfront Times, Mr. Ray Hartmann. And from STLmag.com and the St. Louis American newspaper, Alvin, Reid. And speaking of Better Together, Ray, and we were, the organization which is seeking to combine the city and the county through a ballot measure in front of the voters of the state in November of 2020, has announced that by consolidating the city and the county into one city, there will be billions of dollars in savings. Sounds kind of like Carl Sagan, doesn't it? Billions and billions. Well, the idea is $55 million in savings in the first year, and then after a certain number of years, it'll be $1 billion. Are you buying it?
I think it's go for trillion if you're going to do it. I mean, they're just saying words. I mean, it's like when I wrote the first column about this, where they said we were going to be a city the size of Dallas and San Jose.
Now it's New York.
Ninth the largest in the country, and we weren't. And if they have a case to make, sell it on the merits and sell it on real facts. The story, unless it just got cut for space, they left out the small detail of where this $1 billion is coming from.
Well, consolidation. I mean,
no, but that consolidation, look, for the city to re-enter the county, like a lot of us have thought for years, and do away with its dual status as a city and county would save some money. There's no question about that. Beyond that, there's no evidence, and in fact, the academic literature is on the other side of it, that simply consolidating governments saves money.
Well, in Louisville, according to Dr. Terry Jones of the University of Missouri St. Louis, the cost of government per person is actually higher than it is here. And what's interesting about this proposal is not only are they going to save billions of dollars through economies of scale or something, but they're going to do that by eliminating the earnings tax, which is like $180 million a year in the city, and they've promised that no employees of the city and the county will lose their jobs.
And Louisville didn't have, or Indianapolis, they didn't have 88 municipalities, did they? I mean,
no,
so how can we possibly say that people are not going to lose their jobs, that we're giving assurances of job retention?
We're going to save $1 billion.
Well, because I understand we're going to save $1 billion, but these questions keep coming up, and they're just not being answered to anyone's satisfaction.
Well, maybe they'll cut the municipalities' employees. I mean,
Yeah.
if the city employees don't get cut and their pensions are fine, and the county employees don't get cut and their pensions are fine, if they're talking about saving money, they got to cut somebody.
Something's missing from the discussion, and I really would like to know what my senators think of this. I would like to know what Ann Wagner, who represents, my district in Kirkwood, thinks about this. Scott Sifton, who's talking about running for governor. I mean,
Senator Blunt.
Why aren't these questions being asked of our elected officials? And maybe they have, but I need to read that, because we're to the point where, like, this craziness, we're going to save, I'll do my best English accent, $1 billion, where is this coming from with no budget? Admitted in that story. So, like, well, we don't have a budget. The way you're going to save $1 billion is going to be left up to the leaders. Now, how ridiculous is that?
And you're right, Alvin, because this afternoon, Senator Blunt was questioned about how the military, how the emergency declaration on the border and how the military budget is going to be impacted, and how the geospatial agency is going, NAGA is going to be affected. And he also answered questions about the NCAA and the Mizzou suspension. But you couldn't like ease in a question about Better Together to one of our senators. I mean, that's kind of, I would like to know how they feel about it.
Hey, okay, let's move on to another topic. And in the city of St. Louis, there's a pretty, how would you describe it, volatile, controversial Board of Aldermanic President race. Heated. That's the word we're looking for. See, you're a wordsmith. I'm not. And we have in one case where the president of the Board of Aldermen, the incumbent, Alvin Reid, his name is Louis Reid, and he has complained that Jamila Nasheed, a state senator, has also on some legal documents gone by the name Janice Williams, which I believe was her name at one point until she changed it about 12 years ago. He also called her a double agent at one point, and now the Council for American Islamic Relations has said that that's an anti-Islamic trope and an insult, and he needs to apologize to the area's Muslim community. I don't know if I'd go that far. I think it was kind of a game of legal gotcha that Reid was going on, but what do you think?
I agree with all points said. He needs to apologize. He did it purposely. He was talking to not black voters. He was talking in kind of code to white voters. And I tell the world out there, what if a white man had done it? What if a white gentleman was running for president of the Board of Aldermen and he did the exact same thing? There'd be a firestorm, and Louis Reid deserves the exact same response. This was not about, name here, just blah, blah, blah. He's playing a race card in a way. And I think it just smacks of desperation.
Well, I didn't think so originally, and then I read Umar Lee's piece in the St. Louis American. And sometimes you're reading something and change your mind. And I thought that Lee had a really good point about Islamic names, and that he thought this was like you do. That he thought this was meant as an insult.
How much does the endorsement of the black trade unions mean? Because Jamila now has that. If I would think that would be a significant endorsement. So
and St. Louis American also.
Right.
But the thing with endorsements, I don't know anymore.
Yeah.
Louis Reid has won citywide.
Right. Sure.
And none of the others have.
Right.
Well, the thing about Umar Lee,
Things
though, is he
change.
said some ugly things in the
Yes,
past.
he
Wait,
has.
so-
But his
he
piece
had.
in the American was well
Right.
reasoned.
But I'm just saying that
Yeah.
his reaction to it, I think, is viable and understandable, and for it to just be dismissed by Louis Reid's campaign. Oh, and by the way, one of the arguments they had was Louis Reid has people of the Islamic faith working for him. Well, that just sounds like when a white candidate says, "Well, I got some black people working for me," right?
People,
Well, I think the issue is less. I don't know what I think about whether he was being an Islamophobe or not, but whether or not he was, it was a cheap shot. I mean, in other words, if the voters right now, you talk about better together, it'd be interesting to hear, certainly, and maybe they've all made their position on better together and I haven't paid attention, but there's so many issues, whether it's crime, whether it's your city's economics, whether it's obviously better together. There are so many substantive issues. And I think Louis Reid does the public a disservice by, and I'm not saying he's the only one doing it, but clearly getting into this kind of name stuff is really not helpful.
You can't argue with Alvin's point that if this were a white candidate,
it's-
you would be screaming Islamophobe.
I don't know if
I
that's
don't know
true.
that I
Yes,
would
you would.
be.
I don't
know
think
that
it's
I
that
would be.
obvious, guys. I think he
That's
was
right.
challenging her because the
That's-
law does state that you have to have a certain name on your legal documents. Her name, she happens to have a name that is kind of Anglo-Saxon and then one that is, I guess, Muslim or something.
my point is,
so now you're saying that you
So did
can't.
Lou Alcindor.
Yeah.
And
But
Kareem
it's what you're saying then, if a person is Muslim, then if there is a question about the name on a legal document, you can't question it.
No,
and I
wait,
don't think that's
no,
true.
because I would say that because you know exactly why she changed her name. Now, if I'm running for office as Alvin Reid, but then I own property as
Lone
Sebastian
Ranger.
Cabot,
Right.
or whatever, then they'd say, like, what is that about? Right. But if a woman changes her name or a man changes his name because of the faith they have, that shouldn't be questioned.
And
No, but
I agree with
he
Alvin
wasn't
on that
questioning her changing the name. He was questioning about how her, and I didn't agree with this, but he was questioning how two names were appearing on documents and yet one name was appearing on the ballot,
No,
which
most-
is apparently,
all right,
according to some lawyers, could be against the law.
Most Islamic people who don't legally change their name, their W-2 form has their former name on it.
And
that's
also
who they
known
pay.
as.
They
That's what we
pay
talked about
their
last
taxes
week.
under
Right.
the name of what their
AKA.
former
Well,
name
the next
was.
time I see World Be Free, I'm going to ask him.
Well,
So, all
He
right.
changed his
Yeah.
name, though.
and
He did.
I
He
still
did.
think it was wrong of him, regardless of
I
what
agree,
his
but-
motive was.
But the race card or the
And that's
religion
how-
card, I don't pull
Well,
that so
but-
quickly
yeah.
unless it's more
obvious.
But it's not.
That was pretty obvious.
I think
to me.
it.
And I'm not saying that he's racist or
Right,
Islamophobic or anything. I'm just saying he
played
played that card.
I don't
Okay,
think. I think Alvin may be right about that.
You're switching. You're going wobbly.
Well, I am because
All right,
he's
okay.
persuading me. Well, I will say this: that article was
Now
good.
that you joined the RFT, you've gone wobbly.
No, I will say this: the article did have one factual reference because it was talking about Muhammad Ali, and it had claimed that Muhammad Ali had done "What's My Name" with Floyd Patterson when in fact it was Ernie Terrell.
Oh, good
Just
for
to
you.
correct
You're a
that.
sharp cookie.
Just to correct.
Bill McClellan, another sharp cookie. I want to ask you about Bible study in public schools. Do you think, like some legislators in Jefferson City, that maybe Kirkwood High and Webster Groves High, for that matter, I don't know, Oakville High, should be able to have Bible study courses as an elective? Not required, but as an elective.
Yeah, sure I do. I mean, as a matter of fact, if my kids were in high school and that was offered to them, I'd say probably a smart thing to take it and read the Bible as an elective course. And I don't see it as necessarily a religious thing, but it's part of the culture. And, you know, Daniel in the lion's den and
Joshua in the Battle of Jericho.
right, and
Yeah.
David and Goliath. I think that stuff is fine. I would have no objection.
Well, you mentioned Kirkwood. When I was in high school, we had like a Bibleist literature course, and we did Song of Solomon, and I think some of Psalms, and it was just how it was written. And you're kind of phrasing it like Bible study. That's different. I think it has to be historically based, or the English of the Bible, or maybe like I say, it's not about Jesus is better than this or all that. That's not the goal of these classes. But if I did it in 1976, I just don't think that the world has changed so much that you can't do it in 2019.
I think it's a very bad idea, regardless of whether it was done in '76 or not. I think it's great for a religious-based school to do a private school. If you were teaching comparative religions as sort of a generic course, that's one thing. But to study the Bible or to study the Quran and to make it an elective, I think is crossing the line. It's just separation of church and
But
state.
if you have the Quran
Well,
and the
but
Torah,
it's always if.
and how can that be?
That's the problem with the if. If you did, the point is, if it were just,
You're saying they're
if
not
there was
going
an
to.
elective,
Okay.
right? And you did. It's a slippery slope because if, for example, the only elective at Parkway was to study the Quran as an elective course, a lot of people would have a problem with it. And so it sounds great if you say, well, we want to teach everything, and I do think studying comparative religions is a good thing. But to actually teach the Bible or to have it as an elective, I have a problem.
I think the Bible as literature and as stories is terrific. And if somebody wanted to have a course elective in the Quran or something, that'd be fine with me too.
Again, it's the if and it.
Well, no, I mean, I don't think you necessarily do. Like, I wouldn't say you can't teach the Bible unless you teach the
think the-
Quran
And you would
the
also
Torah or
say,
something.
conversely, that you can't teach the Quran unless you're teaching the Bible, correct?
No, is that what he's saying? That's the problem.
I'm saying if I'm on the school board and somebody comes up with me and says, as an elective, I'd like to teach the Bible. I think this could be good. I go, that's interesting. I think so. But if somebody came up to me and said, hey, I'd like to teach the Torah, then I go, sure, that sounds good.
Well,
I don't think you have to say we're going to include everybody.
Yeah.
That's why
Now, one of
we
my
have
favorite
churches.
teachers of all time, Pete Nardi. I saw him today. Contemporary issues. We tackled like religious subjects, but one of the things that we did was in that class we had to read the Communist Manifesto, beginning to end. And people were upset with that. Well, how could you be reading that? And it's like, because we're not turning into communists, we're studying it
Learning.
because it's
there's
historic.
a
I think
different
that
when you
explains
talk-
a lot of your views now, Alvin.
Oh, no.
When you talk about when you talk about the separation of church and state, which is a real thing, public schools are funded by the government. That's the best way to protect freedom of religion is to keep government out of it. And I'm not anti-Bible when I say that, but are you going to start studying how the Bible thinking that are preaching or teaching that the world's 6,000 years old and juxtapose that against science?
No, we're not
teaching-
talking.
No, that's the problem.
No,
I know
no,
you're
no,
not. not talking
an
about
elective
it.
course
Right, and
on
Reid,
the Bible.
and
Where does that elective
But
course
wait,
go?
no,
is my
but
point.
he's
You don't
also
have to take a
saying
course since it's
that you have
elective.
to structure a class that explains what it is. This is not like you could just come here and have church session in the classroom.
Right.
Now, even the pastor who wants to pass his bill, and it probably won't pass because there's a lot of people that don't want to
Blowback,
do it, a lot of blowback. But he said that what we're doing is giving the school board a chance to structure a class. Now, that has to now be presented to the state, has to pass muster, church, state, all that. But if you want to say, like, we're going to teach a class that shows you where things happened in the Bible and where towns are in Israel and how, it's 70 miles from Nazareth to Jerusalem, I don't have a problem with
All
that.
right. Okay.
I'm not
Okay.
anti-Bible.
Very well. Let's move
It's a
on.
slippery slope.
Bill McClellan, we'll go to you on another topic, and that is Kay Quinn had a piece last week on Channel 5 where she showed there are about one carjacking every day. There is a carjacking every day in the greater St. Louis area. That was true for last year and this year, and they're all over. On Hodemont, in Richmond Heights, in Baldwin, in Butler Hill Road, Schnooks, out in Fenton, and it seems as though there's nothing that a motorist can do to protect him or herself. Do you have any ideas?
Well, no, I mean, a motorist can't do anything but give up your car. I mean, if somebody has a gun on you. If we wanted to slow this down, I'm afraid we would have to have mandatory sentencing, and I've generally been against that. But if all these kids who are doing carjackings knew that if they're arrested for a carjacking, whether they're the carjacker or just in the car, they're going to get a flat sentence and do like 10 years or something. That's the only thing that I could imagine could help on this, because the citizen can't do anything. You just have to give up your car.
I just don't know what has happened to my fellow founder tonight. But I actually agree that there should be enhanced sentencing, much like there is with hate crimes or others, and that we ought to have definitely hope that the courts have less and less tolerance for leniency when it comes to carjacking, because it's becoming one of the really serious crimes that affects everybody across all lines. It's not a city problem or a county problem. It's a problem. When you mention mandatory minimums, that's the whole basis for all the criminal justice reform that's going on right now. Mandatory minimums that tie the hands of judges.
Well, how do you stop this otherwise?
As I
Greg?
say, I think you can enhance the penalties and you can enforce them better, but mandatory
Enhanced,
minimums.
what is the difference?
It's like
What's the
3
difference
strikes and you're
between-
out.
What's the difference between enhanced and mandatory?
Big difference, because
Okay.
one enhances the sentencing, either the guidelines or the penalties, and the other ties the hands of judges. Mandatory minimums, are like the 3 strikes and you're out, are a proven failure. They're the basis of all the criminal justice reform. That's all I'm saying. I'm not disagreeing with Bill about
This is
strengthening
how-
the penalties and making it more serious crime,
I almost think
not
there's
mandatory
there's
minimums.
like a criminal newsletter, where they say, okay, this is all you have to do, because friends of ours, he was driving home in a luxury car and he was being followed. Once he was pegged on the highway, he was being followed. They followed him to his driveway in Town and Country. When he got out, he had a gun pointed in his face. So if they're smart enough to follow you home and take the chance, that you might have a weapon in your glove box, then they're smart enough to figure out mandatory
about the mandatory sentencing. I would say this: I think it was a woman who got carjacked in Baldwin at a restaurant there. Mysteriously, that assailant would end up with more time than the guy who got carjacked at the North St. Louis gasoline station.
And I know someone.
That's what I would be fearful of. Look, it's the same crime. They deserve the same sentence, and that
Agreed.
sentence should be stiff.
Agreed.
So I don't have a
Well,
problem with that.
here's the deal, though, guys. Bill, I'm a little unconvinced with your theory. Why? Because we have pretty stiff sentences on crimes like homicide, and yet it doesn't look like we're putting big dents in the homicide numbers.
Well, but I think if you're crazy enough to kill somebody, I think people who carjack people, while people do get killed, don't get me wrong, during this crime, I think most people who do it, their intent is not to murder someone. But it is still a horrific situation where one should face a very
I think what you're assuming that
there's
the
an intent.
And
right?
here's
Yeah.
the thing.
Yeah.
I don't know what the penalties are, and we haven't studied currently for carjacking. I agree with Bill that we need to increase the penalties, But there's a difference between increasing the penalties and mandatory minimums that do not work and tie the hands of judges.
What you're talking about increasing the penalties, and that's fine. I'm talking about the certainty of penalty is what can stop things.
And that
more.
was the whole theory about 3 strikes and you're out. The whole theory
I was
about
against
mandatory
three strikes
and
and you're
because
out. It's not the same
mandatory
thing.
minimums are the same thing and they don't work.
No,
and they tie the hands of judges, and that's why we have judges not to have mandatory minimums. I'm sorry.
Okay, but 3 strikes and you're out is not the same as a mandatory minimum, right? It isn't.
It's the same. It's a cousin.
No,
It's a cousin.
a cousin. Okay.
Wendy,
It
wanna
ties
ask you-
judges' hands.
I want to go back to the city of St. Louis, where Carol Howard is running for her aldermanic seat and being challenged by Tony Pesanovsky, who has been, he's written articles about the Communist Party and apparently has been a member of the Communist Party, such as it is. I don't know when the meetings are or how many dues-paying members there are in Missouri or Kansas. Nonetheless, he's running as a communist. He is a communist, but running as a Democrat. And a lot of the establishment Democrats have said, get the heck off this ticket because you're communist, not Democratic. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think that Carol Howard, he's trying to deflect by pointing at her and saying, yeah, but you're a Republican. And his rationale, she refuted. She said, look, when it came to minimum wage, I have no problem with the minimum wage law, because that was where he was calling her out. She said, I just don't think it should be in this city. I think it should be statewide. And then it was on the airport privatization and a public vote. She introduced that in committee. It didn't make it out of committee. So, 2 gotchas, and she refuted them both, seamlessly. But what's really interesting is he has these front porch meetings, and she was calling him out on that and saying, are you letting voters know that you are a communist? And he said, the only thing that voters care about is that I'm a Democrat and I'm running for, he's kind of like trying to nail Jell-O to a wall. He's not giving anybody any answers. I'm not sure if it's got any traction with the voters.
Leave my fellow commie alone. How do we get all this communist stuff? I don't know. The man could have like a hammer and sickle flag out front of his house. Communism is not a party in the city of St. Louis. So yes, I think you said I'm a communist and I'm running as a Democrat. I don't really have a problem with that.
Well, he should say that then, Alvin. It's just like Bernie Sanders says, I'm a socialist, but I'm running as a Democrat. Great. This fella doesn't seem to want to own up to being a communist.
Yeah.
If
Is Bernie Sanders really a socialist? If I asked him for some money, would he give it to me?
He's a democratic socialist. He's a democratic
Let's
socialist.
try.
He would. Alvin, I think.
Well, I've
Just
always
try
tried-
me.
Try me, right.
I've always tried to be a capitalist with my own money and a socialist with others. But what's this about a columnist not being able to run for? Oh, I'm sorry.
Communist,
Oh,
not
a
communist.
communist. I'm sorry. I missed
Yeah,
it.
not a
All right,
columnist.
Alvin Reid,
Not a
let's move
columnist.
on. Illinois' governor, J.B. Pritzker, had a speech last night on the woeful financial state of the land of Lincoln. And he basically said they got to start having sports gambling and tax it. Got to start selling pot, tax it. Got to start levying a tax on plastic bags. Got to have a graduated income tax. And he's got some other ideas as well. What do you think?
Well, I think that's what you call leadership. I also think that we'll have to put another lane on the Poplar Street Bridge when that happens for all the St. Louisans racing over there to make a bet or buy some marijuana or bring their money from Missouri right on over to Illinois. And we'll be last. We'll be the last ones that say, oh man, all the pot money's gone and all the gambling money's gone because Arkansas and Kansas and Illinois got on first. Look, they're broke. When you're broke, you need new revenue, you need new money. Meanwhile, Missouri, no, we're not going to have toll roads, and no, we're not going to raise the gas tax, and no this and no that. Where in Illinois, they're saying like, hey, if it's going to raise some money, let's do it.
Yeah, but what about Atlantic City? What about Las Vegas? Those
Give
are
sports
both,
gambling
You're
they're
thinking
just
that that's a
starting.
different
That's just
animal.
starting. And
Okay.
New Jersey and Delaware are making about 5 times as much money as they originally thought they would. It's getting
Boy,
taxed.
Alvin,
it's coming in.
Good old Alvin. We've heard this before with casino gaming, with the lottery, with so many different things. Let's tax alcohol, and that doesn't work. The key to a state is you have to educate the people, have a great educated workforce, attract businesses.
And that's
selling pot was
gonna
gambling.
solve all
Excuse
problems.
me, Charlie, that speaks to Alvin's point because Missouri has prided itself on doing everything possible to treat revenues as if they were a disease. And as a result of that, we are 40-something in how much we invest in children's education,
But
K
we'll
through
talk
12.
about Illinois. Let's give the
no,
folks
no,
over there a
but
little shot.
Illinois isn't. And my point is, and we've already doing it with adult entertainment for years. There's St. Louis area has adult entertainment clubs, just like every other big city, and they're zoned into Illinois, to Sauget and to other places. And a lot of money, tax money that would be going to the city of St. Louis,
Yeah,
goes
have you
to
seen those
Sauget.
towns? They're doing really well.
Well,
they're
I gotta
just
tell
flush
you,
with
the
cash.
revenues-
Good. Is that the best example you
No,
can have?
it's probably the worst example. But the point is, it's an example, much like gambling and other vices, that the vices exist.
Vice exists,
And the money
tax it.
goes
I
over
know
there.
they exist.
The
I'm just
tax-
saying.
let's just
they-
exploit
If
it.
we legalized pot, you could settle down a little bit. You could calm down.
And
a
the-
lot.
No,
pot-
the new study
pot's
says there's a link
probably
between
better,
pot and
but I'll tell
violence.
you
Wow.
that there's a lot of money that leaves
All
Missouri
right.
This was
to
very
go to
fresh in
Illinois.
his mind.
Okay,
I'm
let's
wondering
go to the
about
mailbag
lunch
and see
today.
what the viewers had, what you had to say. I'm not saying it's good or bad. Long term, it's probably best for the community as a whole vis-a-vis other cities, but let's not pretend that Better Together is anything more than a redistribution of the area's wealth and resources. That from John Andier of St. Peter's. Tim King wrote, I think the unknowns in the Better Together proposal would be better for the city of St. Louis than the inequities present in the development of post-bankrupt Detroit. Mr. King's from Fenton. Thank you very much. Right is care of KETC, 63108. Don't forget those letters at ketc.org and those tweets, hashtag Donnybrook STL. And you can follow us on our podcasts on Apple and Spotify, TuneIn, and Google Play. Don't forget those tweets because Alvin and Wendy are going to read those in just a matter of moments, right? I think so. Yeah, we got the A-Team coming up on your turn. Everybody else, will see you next week at this time. Thanks so much, but don't go away.
Donnybrook is made possible by the members of the 9 Network.
Let's all go to A&W. Alvin and Wendy.
I can't believe you said that.
You got it?
I swear
All right.
I got it. I got
Your
it.
turn, and we're going to start with Peter in North St. Louis. Hi, Peter.
Hi, Peter.
Hello, good evening. Everybody was in fine form. Yeah, I want to talk about the car thievery.
All right.
Cars are a large item. It's wealth, and it's completely necessary for getting around.
Absolutely.
Hey, just like horses were.
You know what? Peter, I'm not going to interrupt you, but I said that in the
Production meeting.
In the production meeting, so go ahead. And I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I just wanted to throw that out there. Go right ahead.
Okay. Yeah, just like horses were, cars are valuable. Cars are valuable, and horses were valuable, and we have a fine tradition in the Old West. Horse thievery was a hanging offense.
It's almost as if you had a microphone in the production meeting because that is verbatim what Alvin said earlier today.
I did say that. I said,
Yeah.
back then you could shoot somebody and there would be like an investigation.
It was
all
like,
that.
well, they took his horse, so.
Right, but if they took his horse,
Yeah.
death penalty. Thank you, Peter.
Thanks, Peter. Let's go to Jim in South City. Hi, Jim. Welcome. You're on Donnybrook. Your turn. How are you?
Good evening. I'm fine, thank you. Comment is, if a course in a public school is truly elective and the credit for that course would not go to graduation credit, I don't see a problem with an overview of the Bible, hopefully including Old Testament, New Testament, and possibly a unit on the Quran. My comment. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, Jim, that's very rational. And I didn't even think about it doesn't count toward graduation. So thus, if you want to do it, you do it. And that's a great call.
Very good point.
Comment.
Very good point.
Let's go to Clifford in Sunset Hills. Hi, Clifford.
Hi, Clifford.
Wendy and Alvin, a great discussion tonight. And Alvin, that is the coolest tie that you're wearing.
Well,
the money, all those billions of dollars that are going to be saved, that is great. But there's a story that goes like this. There's two people talking about the project and the test data, and one says to one, the test data doesn't support our plan. And the response is, we know our plan is brilliant, so just adjust the data to support it. And then the response is, you mean falsify the data? And the response is, no, let's not get hung up in discussing the definition of things. I wonder if that's going to work here too.
I hear what you're saying, and what you're basically saying is, and I'm not putting words in your mouth, but if I commission a study and I pay for it, my guess is that study is going to come
reflect
whatever I paid for.
Well, look at the name of the organization from the get-go. That was an exploratory organization, as I recall. And I thought at least they could have put a question mark behind it because there was an implied, exclamation point instead of, because it's like it was already a foregone conclusion. You thought we were better together. So, yes, you're absolutely right, Clifford. We couldn't agree with you more, and we're glad you called.
Thank you so much.
Let's go to Debbie in Des Peres. Hi, Debbie. Welcome. You're on Donnybrook. Your turn.
Yeah, I had a comment about the Better Together, and I'm glad Alvin's there. He's familiar with Des Peres. Our mayor just put out a newsletter this past week, and it really promoted how much money we would lose our entire sales tax in an excess of $60 million. Bypass Des Peres and go to the city. That would leave nothing for the city of Des Peres because we do not pay taxes in Des Peres on city taxes because of the sales tax. And they also told us it floats all the way down to they will have control of whether our streets will be plowed in the winter, which I think is very interesting because they don't plow them in the city. But he has some very good information. I wish I hadn't thrown it away. But if Alvin can get a copy of that newsletter, it kind of puts it into facts for people that live places.
And Debbie, I want to be very clear here. He might be Mr. Kirkwood, but my friends and I used to cruise Des Peres when we were in high school, just saying. So I am familiar. But we're glad you called.
Right.
Thanks.
Now I'm going to tell on myself right here, okay? West County Mall is 50 years old, and I'm 8, and it opened 50 years ago this week, and I was 8 years old.
Yep.
And about, maybe 15 years ago or whatever, they blighted in Des Peres, the council got it passed, that West County Mall was blighted.
Right.
And I went there and said, look, you're cheating the school district and all that of taxes by doing this. Well, guess what? They blighted it. It turned it around. It's very successful. That's why one of the reasons that people in Des Peres don't, have the tax burden that other places have.
Right.
All right. I was wrong on that. They were right. But now here we come to the point where Debbie's exactly right. It doesn't matter how we got here. We're here now. And the whole idea that now we have to maybe float other people, I'm not down with it, Debbie. Not at all.
No, she found a familiar friend here. So
there you go.
Yeah, thanks, Debbie.
We got some tweets, Wendy.
Let's start with our tweets.
All right.
At Mrs. Shortstop. Anything that gets rid of the city's earning tax is great. Illinois mileage tax is a non-starter. There has to be a better way. Thank you, at Mrs. Shortstop.
All right. Sister Sarah, 23. The Bible isn't just a historical text. Wouldn't it be better to use history books to teach ancient history and geography of the Middle East?
Thank you, at Sister Sarah. At Mary B. Wild or Wilt. Perhaps have an elective course in public high schools called Religions of the World. I like that. But embracing one religion over another or holding a religious class that proselytizes on one specific faith crosses a line between separation of church and state. And I think Mary B. Wilt might actually be Ray Hartmann, because that
that's what he was saying.
That
exactly.
was the point that he was trying to make. But your tweets are welcome. Hashtag Donnybrook STL. Thank you all.
And let's go to Suzette in Swansea. Hi, Suzette.
Hi, Suzette.
Hi, Wendy. Hi, Alvin.
Hi.
I am all for Bible study in school, and let me just tell you why. Our children need something, some form of self-respect and respect for others, and the Bible will teach that. Now, I know the separation of state and government. I understand all that, but have you ever just sit down and see the state that what children are facing and what teachers face right now with students? Majority have no respect for one another, nevertheless the teachers. Now, if this is going to be a requirement for graduation, and I would say no, but this is an elective. These students don't have to take this for graduation. It's just something that is an elective. Now, are we having problems with the word, maybe? Bible study? Can we just change that word? Because I think that's what the problem is using the word Bible study. Because I don't know anything, with the Quran or maybe with the Greek scriptures or the Hebrew scriptures that will not teach self-respect and respect for others. And that's what our young children need. I mean, that's just the bottom line. They need it. They're not getting it. Apparently, they're not getting it at home.
Okay.
So if we have to put it in schools, we have to put it in schools.
All right. Suzette, I want you to understand. I think it's okay to teach history of, literature of. What you're saying, I totally disagree with, okay? This is not about bringing the Bible and bringing the principles of the Bible into a public school setting, all right? This is about where things happen, how they were written, and it will point out that what is in the Bible that says happened at this time really didn't happen at that time. Impossible, all right? This is not like saying don't believe in the Bible or anything like that, but I'm saying what you're saying I totally disagree with, because this is about history of, literature of. I don't have a problem with that.
And Suzette, I, as a Christian, obviously, and Alvin is a Christian, we are in agreement with you in terms of the precepts, but you're never going to get it past the school board. I mean, that is why we have those constitutional protections in place, separating church and state. But yeah, you're talking about using the Bible as a way of living, and I think that's what Alvin is saying. That's where that's where the line gets a little fuzzy, but we appreciate your opinion, and we're very glad you called, and we hope you call back.
And I'm not right. I'm not insulting or mad at you in the least. I just want you to understand where I'm coming from. But you're right. Respect is lacking, but public school is not the place to bring the Bible to teach people respect. That's got to go on in the church, and that's got to go on in your home. But thank you, Suzette.
Thank you, Suzette. Let's go to Bill in South County. Hi, Bill. Welcome. You're on Donnybrook. Your turn.
Well, thank you for taking my call.
All right.
You're welcome.
I want to talk about the carjacking issue.
Right.
Something that I have not seen is the statistics on how many cars are hot-wired and stolen versus carjacking. I think that they probably have dropped tremendously. Most new cars require a fob for you to drive and everything like that, and that's the reason they're approaching the driver and everything to get that key with the fob.
Okay.
I think technology has switched it over where there are people that are in danger just because you can't steal a car. Of course, if you got a manual transmission, nobody steal it anyway. Most of these kids can.
Yeah.
I hear you.
I have an old car, so I don't have one of the high-tech key fobs, and I've heard about cars that, what is it, they'll stop in the middle of the intersection? And that's news to me.
Yeah. And over time, in 10 years, carjacking, they'll all be that. But one of our guests, Sarah Finsky, who's with Riverfront Times, she pointed that out, that one of the problems that has been created is that you have to have the fob to drive the car.
Wow.
So thus, if I'm going to steal one, all of a sudden,
you got to have the fob.
I got to physically take the car. So, excellent call.
Thank you, Bill.
Another Bill, Bonterre. Hi, Bill.
Hi, Bill.
I don't advocate killing people over property crimes. I don't think that's good. But I think part of our problem is we've taken the punishment out of prison. You know, there's air conditioning, there's TV, it's too comfortable. If you commit a crime where you're a carjacker or a violent crime against somebody, you should go to a prison that is more like the prison of our ancestors. Not where you're mistreated, but where you're uncomfortable and you work. And I think that would go a long way as to changing the crime rate in this country. And as far as the Bible thing, the first thing that's going to happen is you're going to have some smartass say, well, we're going to have a day for the Satanic Bible.
Good point. All right, thanks, Bill. I hear what you're saying, but, you know, the Constitution, we decided years ago that cruel and unusual punishment was out of hand. So, like, we're not going to have Devil's Island. But I hear what you're saying. But look, if you got to serve 10 years, you could serve it with air conditioning. You could serve it with cable. You could serve it any way you want to, but you're going to do 10 years.
Well, do you remember the lawsuit of the guy that sued because his chocolate cake, his pieces of chocolate cake weren't big enough? That is not that is not Papillon.
Right, exactly. So we got to find a
middle. The golden middle. We thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Bill.
Let's go to Mike in Limay. Hi, Mike. Welcome. You're on Donnybrook. Your turn.
Hi. I'm enjoying the program immensely tonight.
Thank you.
I've been waiting months for this subject to come up about the carjackings, the problem we've had. I'm 73 years old. I've lived in St. Louis in and around most of my life, except when I was in the service. And the last few years, it's been unbelievable. The thievery and the threatening the citizens, taking their cars. And I firmly believe if you take a car and you threaten a person with a car, whether you kill them or not, you're slated for the death penalty.
Well, you can't go that far because keep in mind, if you say...
I would. If I was the governor, I certainly would.
All right, I hear you, Mike, but at the same time, that means that any crime that you commit with a gun, that you would get the death penalty. So I don't want to go that far, but what I want to say is that whatever the specific crime is that you're charged with, and you might get 2 to 3 years for, you up that, you triple that. I'm good. But if you go to where you're going, that means anytime you pull a gun out and you rob 7-Eleven, you rob anybody under any reason with a gun, then you're slated for the death penalty. So you can't go that far, but I hear what you're saying. Thanks, Mike.
Mike is throwback to your horse thievery.
Thing, right, exactly.
Yeah. Thanks, Mike. Let's go to Terry in Afton. Hi, Terry. Welcome.
Hi, thanks. You guys are doing a great show tonight, and I do love Alvin's tie.
Thank you.
About the carjacking, I've had this idea for a while. We should make it uncool to carjack. Here you got 2 kids with 2 guns. Instead of spending the money getting a gun, why don't you 2 guys put your money together and buy a car? Share it. Why don't we have a program through the schools where these kids can work on a car and earn a car.
All right.
Instead of making it cool to, go steal one. It's not cool.
All right.
How do we get the message out,
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, that the whole thing with if you work on cars, you know cars, maybe you want a car and all that. But at the same time, we're dealing with a different, Terry, I don't know what age you are, but you sound about my age, okay? And how these man, how these young cats see things, black, white, Asian, whatever. It's different than how we saw it. And why they do the things they do, I don't have an explanation for. What I have is punish them for doing these out of control things. And maybe as you get older, you get more conservative and you get more, penalty based instead of let's educate them based. But don't do it. I don't have to create a program that teaches you not to do it. How about don't do it or face the penalty?
Yeah, I'm with you. Thank you, Terry. We appreciate it. Where are we going now?
Janet in Webster. Hi,
Hi,
Janet.
Janet.
Hi, Alvin, Wendy. A lot of good topics tonight. I always watch your show. I'm calling to talk about the the alternatives class for the students with the Bible thumpers teaching Bible.
Oh, come on now. That was an editorial comment. All right, go right ahead. Go ahead.
I pay high school taxes here in Webster, and I would like my taxes to go for the school children to learn how to drive a car. It is my understanding that we no longer teach driver's ed.
That is correct. That is correct.
And this would be a better way for all those students to do their civic duty and learn how to drive a car.
Okay.
So that's my 2 cents for where I would like the school district to spend my money that I pay for school taxes for those students.
All right.
I don't want to paying for various religious classes. If we allow the Bible to be taught, we're going to have to let the Quran and all these others. So that's my feelings on that topic.
Janet, have you ever taught a teenager how to drive?
No, I have not.
Okay, you will,
two.
and I have a belief system will come in handy. You've got to trust me on that because
Absolutely.
You will need one when you get behind the wheel with a 16-year-old. Just saying. So thank you though.
So you are in favor of having it taught by a professional at a school.
Oh, absolutely. Right. I wish they still had it.
Yeah.
We had to. Our kids went to private school, and we had to pay for a driver education.
Yeah, I
course,
did too.
Right.
I did too.
Yeah.
But we taught them, and you're absolutely right. But I wish they did have it in school.
We supplemented,
Right.
but I do have a lot of gray hair from that time period. So
Woo-hoo.
yeah. But
Right.
thank you, Janet.
All right. Thank you, Janet.
you.
More tweets, Wendy.
Going back to the Twitterverse.
No Passion 7. Because Western literature is fraught with biblical references, a course in the literary aspects of the Bible seems like an excellent idea, maybe even essential for an aspiring English lit major. That's where I'm coming from.
At Mike Beneke, Better Together's promise of pie in the sky, another editorial comment, benefits seem to be using the same evidence as the Brexit proponents who promised great things for Great Britain. Thank you, at Mike Beneke. Interesting.
And Mert Warson, if parents want their kids to learn about the Bible or any other religious text, there are thousands of churches and religious schools to choose from. Religion doesn't belong in public schools. Hashtag Donnybrook STL.
We still have time for you.
Absolutely. Candy, Olivet.
I think we missed Dave in
Oh,
Washington.
Dave in
Yeah,
Washington.
Dave. Hi,
Sorry,
Dave.
Dave.
Hey, good evening. Thanks for taking my call.
Absolutely.
Just a couple comments on the Bible study in school. I had 4 sons who went to Catholic high school. One of their required classes was world religions. I got to participate in a field trip to a synagogue. Never been in one before. I actually think towards the end, my youngest son actually got college credit for it. So it was, it was the study of religion in the world. It wasn't any particular thing, and I thought it was great. The other comment I have is, by the time it gets to committee, they will never agree on which Bible to use. So I don't think we have anything to worry about.
Oh, Dave, you know what? Sometimes people have excellent calls.
That's a great point.
Excellent.
King James.
Oh,
right.
my goodness. The new abridged, on and on and on.
That'll
exactly.
take 10 years.
Wow, what a wonderful call.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, Dave.
Appreciate it.
Now, Cindy in Olivet. Hi, Cindy.
Hi, how are you guys?
Just fine.
Thank you.
Okay, I wanted to talk to you about the carjacking issue.
Okay.
I have a 20-year-old Toyota Tacoma, so I'm kind of like Wendy. I got an old dog truck. they're going to have to point a gun at me to get me out of it. But my concern is, and I wonder if anybody's looked into this ever before, are women with children and families and elderly being more targeted, especially in those incidents. That's a concern.
All right.
Now, my other thing is I'm a history major. I'm a history buff. I do not see anything wrong with having a class about world religion. I went to Kaiser School. So
Kirkwood.
hey, Alvin.
Hey, Kirkwood. Yep.
And then I went to University City Schools, and we studied Buddhism. We studied Hinduism.
Right.
We studied the Torah. We studied the history of the Bible, but it was in a context of a study of a piece of literature.
Mhm.
Now, I know little or nothing about the Torah, or the Quran, but I've worked with people who are Muslim, and so they taught me stuff just talking to me. So I'm not against that. I'm a Presbyterian, U-City Presbyterian Church at Midland and Delmar, so we had St. James, and I'm sure there's going to be a dust storm about that.
Right.
But from a historical and understanding standpoint of world religions, and I'm going way past the three basic ones y'all are talking about now.
I hear you.
Let's get to it.
All right.
Understand people that are different than yourself.
There you go, Cindy. That's what I'm saying, too. Thank you so much. All right.
Maybe we have such impasses today because we stopped teaching that kind of stuff.
Right.
So thank you, Cindy.
Charlie in North County. Hi, Charlie.
Hi.
Hi.
Great show, and I actually had a question for Alvin.
Sure.
Because he took me back to a simpler time when you were talking about the politicians changing their names.
Mm-hmm.
You said Sebastian Cabot, and be honest, were you thinking of Family Affair?
Of course he was. Of course he was.
I was grabbing a name out of the air, and why that one came to me, I have no idea.
I heard the music. Did anybody else hear the music? Da, 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 da.
I got to tell you, I thought, well, when he gets off, he's going to run home and watch TV Land.
Yeah.
I was reaching for a name, and that's which one came up. But yes,
I couldn't believe it.
That was straight Family Affair. It was.
Yeah. Mr.
Thanks,
Bill
guys.
or was Mr. French or
Mr. French.
Mr. French
Right.
and Uncle Bill.
Yeah.
Uncle Bill. Well, thank you, Charlie.
Thank you.
For taking us down memory lane. Let's go to Jules in Highland, Illinois. Is that right, Jules?
Yes, it is.
Hi, how are
great
you?
show tonight, great topics, and I wanted to speak about religion. I went to Catholic school and church every morning, and they should teach something in schools. They have math, everything, and they should teach something how people should treat people. That's my comment.
Okay.
tonight.
Well, you could have dignity class.
And I do think that we have heard of teachers who have phoned into the program who said that they have conversations about how to treat people who are different. So maybe that is happening. We have a flurry of activity here in the last couple of seconds.
Okay, we got Jules. So we're going to go to Donna. Hi, Donna.
Hi there.
Go right ahead.
Two things. I think if you have to stay in prison 10 years, mandatory for stealing a car, it don't matter if they got AC or whatever in the prison or not. Who wants to be locked up for 10 years? Come on. Secondly,
So
they
don't steal
don't
the
need
car.
Devil's Island, Just throw away the key for 10 years. That is the middle ground.
I agree with you. Thank
Gosh,
you, Donna.
Donna, we agree.
Absolutely.
Wow.
All right, John in Wildwood. Hi, John.
Hi, John.
How y'all doing?
Thank you.
So quickly, so I have children in parochial and public schools, so I understand the separation of church and state. But do you feel that at some point the Pledge of Allegiance in schools becomes a tipping point for this whole debate? And that's my question.
I don't. I think it's two separate issues completely. So
you and I are in agreement on one nation under God?
well, I mean, in God we trust, or one nation under God. Everybody has a God.
So you don't have a problem with that?
Not really. I mean, who's your God? You
So-
know, and if you don't want to do it, don't do it. I would rather not put the kids or parents or anything through that. Just leave it alone. At the same time, who's your God? You worship your God.
Just don't take a knee. That's all, probably.
Take a knee.
Take
a knee. Get paid.
Have a wonderful weekend. Thank you so much for joining us.
This was a great show tonight.
It was a good one. We'll
see you guys next
Thursday.
week.
Good night.